Welcome back. Once again, I'm Julie Hyman, anchor at Yahoo Finance, and this is Verizon's Ready for Anything Commencement series. Our next speaker is a great one. It's Katie Sowers. She is the offensive assistant coach for the San Francisco 49ers, and she's also only the second woman to hold a full-time NFL coaching position and also the first openly gay coach in the NFL. She's in her fourth season in that league, the second as that holding that job at the 49ers. She started her NFL career at the Atlanta Falcons and spent 5 years as the athletic director of the city of Kansas City. She also played tackle football herself. Of course, she played in the Women's Football Alliance for 8 years. Again, got to mention the alma mater. In this case, she has a master's degree in kinesiology. I'll get that out, Katie, from the University of Central Missouri. So I want to bring in now Katie Sowers.
Thank you, Julie. Class of 2020, I'm honored to be here today speaking to you as you move into your next chapter of life. What this chapter holds for you is unknown, but I'm here to tell you that there is beauty in the unknown. I wanted to start out by sharing a journal entry that I have never read in public. I wrote this September 16, 2010. It reads, "Note to me, dear Katie, how are you? What are you doing with your life? Have you fallen in love? I hope so. I'm excited to meet her. I know it won't be years until you read this, but I want you to know I'm at a crossroads in life. I'm struggling to find my way, but I'm hoping that as you read this, you will smile, knowing that all the struggle was worth the pain. I'm lying in bed at 1610 West 49th Street, thinking about a future I long to have. Please tell me you are happy. There is nothing better than pure happiness. Promise me that if you haven't found happiness, you will go out and find it for yourself. Good luck with everything you do in this life. Love, Katie, 24 years old." Now, I just reread this journal entry not too long ago, and it made me reflect back on my story that's probably more similar to your story than you even know. Class of 2020, this is not the graduation you expected, but it is your graduation. Embrace this incredible part of your story. It's a turning point in your life. It's a stepping stone to tomorrow. It's a reminder that nothing in life is guaranteed, but is that reality that can make each moment that much more beautiful. As I was thinking about what I wanted to say to you, I came up with the most coach-like thing to do. Provide you with 5 pieces or words of advice that I've learned throughout my life. I would love for you to take these ideas with you as you continue your own journey to impacting the world with your unique gifts and talents. Advice to help you find your own happiness, just as I once longed for my own. Here's number 1. Your attitude will be the difference. If there's one thing that we share, it's that we've all felt the burden of hardship that life can throw at us, especially during this time as we face a worldwide pandemic. I'm here to tell you that it's not the weight of the world that determines how much you can accomplish. It's the way in which you view that weight. Do you allow the weight of the world to weigh you down, or do you use it as fuel to make you stronger? One of the greatest lessons I've learned in this life is that our attitude will dictate our narrative and in the way in which we view our lives. A quote that really stuck with me when I was reading The Happiness Advantage stated, "Reality is merely our brain's relative understanding of the world based on where and how we are observing it." I want you to think of this situation. If you lost everything you had today, the people you love, your ability to walk, talk, your job, you gained it all back tomorrow, tomorrow would be the best day of your life. So what changed from before you lost everything to after you gained it all back? The only thing that changed was the way in which you viewed what it was that you had. I saw a real life example of how our attitude can change our view of reality after my dad had a massive stroke this weekend 2 years ago. At this time, I was preparing to go home and celebrate Memorial Day weekend with my family, and my parents were driving up to Kansas City. At the time, they lived in a little town where I grew up. My dad, being the stud athlete that he is, won a golf tournament that morning, and then drove 3 hours with my mom to spend time with their daughters and grandchildren. We were all enjoying our day, spending time out by the pool, eating a nice family dinner. when all of a sudden I noticed my dad was acting strange. He seemed disoriented and was having trouble seeing out of one of his eyes. I made the decision to take him to the ER just to be safe. What we found was that he was having a minor stroke and would later become a massive stroke that would take away his ability to walk and talk. Little did we know that although my dad survived this massive stroke, he would never make the trip back to the little town of Heston. My parents' short trip to Kansas City ended up being permanent. My mom was presented with difficulties no one could ever be prepared for. She not only had to deal with the grief of watching her husband of 50 years struggle to survive, but she had to make the tough decision to sell what they thought would be their forever home. Now, she knew that this was a battle that she could not handle alone. So for months, my family adapted to this new way of life. There were many times where as though I felt the quality of life could never return for anyone. I remember one trip home, I could tell that the stress and grief was starting to weigh on my mom. I ended up taking my mom to the doctor because everything had become too much to handle and she'd become physically ill. For once in my life, I saw my strong mom reach out for help. The next time I was able to visit my family, I saw a significant difference in my mom. She somehow regained her happiness. I asked her what changed. She told me that she began to think of her situation differently and life changed. She attacked the reality of her life with the mindset that I do not have to take care of my husband. I get to take care of my husband. This simple change of perspective helped me to see that happiness is not just a feeling, but more so a work ethic. It's a mindset. It's an attitude. Class of 2020, I trust that as you enter a career or profession, you will learn to love what you do. And I hope you'll be able to wake up each day and think, I get to go to work rather than I have to go to work. Believe me, this attitude will greatly impact your own happiness as well as the joy of those you will have the privilege of working with. Words of advice number 2, don't assume she likes pink. Now, let me explain. I'm not referring to girls or the color pink. I'm talking about all the invisible barriers that we knowingly and unknowingly place on people due to their gender, race, religion, sexual orientation. No matter how open-minded you believe that you are, we have all been influenced by societal norms. This world is full of stereotypes. You have been and will continue to be influenced by this reality. See, growing up, football was my favorite sport. I remember coming home from school and playing football with my twin sister. Every Sunday, I would look forward to the time where Liz and I would create a list of every kid in the neighborhood that might want to play. We would go down the list of names, calling them one by one, asking if they wanted to get a game of football going. I will say some of them would leave the game crying because I had a unique style of tackling. I would grab them by the shirt and spin them around and throw them down. I still vividly remember the day when I realized that those very same boys that I taught to throw a football came home with a school football jersey. I can still see them holding up that jersey, smiling from ear to ear, knowing that they no longer had to just play in the backyard. They had made it on a real team. That opportunity for me seemed impossible. It felt so unfair, but I had never seen a girl play football on a real team, so I never even considered that to be an option. Now, if I would have allowed this societal norm, this stereotype, this invisible barrier to limit my future, I would not be here today speaking to you as an NFL coach. Looking back, I had no idea that the world's unconscious bias was limiting my opportunities. Have you ever walked through a store and thought about the toy aisles as a boy aisle or girl aisle? One Christmas, I went shopping with my niece Clara and told her she could pick out any toy that she wanted. We proceeded to walk through the toy department, and we walked through the section that was decorated with pink toys, Barbies, baby dolls. She couldn't seem to find what it was that she was looking for. I began to walk down the next aisle, and she quickly told me that we were skipping that aisle because that was the boy aisle. After walking down every girl aisle, we still had yet to find something that interested her. One more time, I said, Clara, let's try this aisle again, the one she referred to as the boy aisle. She finally agreed to take a look and quickly found a really cool Lego set that she loved. A couple years later, Clara was out with my sister, and they drove by a football field that had a bunch of little kids playing football. My sister pointed out one of the little boys on the field, and my niece stopped her mid-sentence and said, boys don't play football. What I began to realize was that my niece had only been exposed to women playing football from a very young age, going to her aunt's football games. Never once had she seen a boy play the game. My sister had to explain to her that both girls and boys can play football. This comment alone validated the impact that we unknowingly have on ourselves and our children by what we expose them to. We can change the view of the world's reality by the things we choose and do not choose to show them. My niece observed football as a girl's game because that was all she had ever been exposed to. When we think of life in terms of store aisles, think how many opportunities we are missing out on because we have somehow created an environment that limits our perspective. Class of 2020 future leaders, with this piece of advice, I urge you to break down the invisible barriers that limit our communities. Be open and accepting of the differences that you come across, and know that it is these differences that will make us stronger. Words of advice number 3. If it doesn't open, it may not be your door. I'm a strong believer in the fact that I am where I am in life because of a lot of stuff that did not go the way in which I planned. When I was in college, I felt like it was time to open up about my sexuality, and I stopped hiding the reality that I was a lesbian. For the most part, everyone was extremely accepting and very, very supportive. For the first time, I got to a point where I really felt like I knew my place in the world. I was open about my sexuality, and my career path seemed to be clear to me. Coaching was always something I knew I wanted to do, following in my dad's footsteps. But the sport in which I thought I was going to coach at this point was basketball, because not only was my dad a basketball coach, but my football experience was limited to playing backyard football with the boys in the neighborhood. Having served as captain for my basketball team, I felt it was a natural transition to continue my leadership qualities and knowledge of the game. During my victory lap in college, or my 5th year, I noticed that my former team was in need of some assistance. Being a private Christian school, they didn't have a lot of money to spend on athletics. I decided that I would reach out to my former basketball coach and see if I could help out with the team as a volunteer assistant, serving in any capacity that they needed. I thought this would be not only a help to me, but it would be great for my experience as a future basketball coach. Everything seemed to be falling into place. When my coach asked to speak to me privately, I knew something was wrong. He proceeded to tell me that because of my lifestyle as an open lesbian, he didn't want me around the team. At this time, my college did not hire professors if they were openly gay. It was kind of a don't ask, don't tell type of situation. So when he told me this, I felt like there was nothing I could do. I remember leaving his office feeling like everything I had envisioned about my future was crumbling to the ground. For weeks, I felt hurt and defeated. I remember being so angry. I was angry at my former coach, who had put me in leadership positions when I was his player, but was so quick to dismiss me the moment I was no longer his player. It was extremely easy to feel sorry for myself. One day, I was sitting in my room, and I made the decision that I had to move on, control the controllables. I began browsing the internet and stumbled upon a women's tackle football league. My childhood memories and my love for football came flooding back, and I quickly began to search for a team in my area. I found a team about an hour away in Michigan. I made the decision to play, and I never looked back. As I think about the discrimination that I encountered, I now see that situation as a blessing. If one door doesn't open, it may not be your door. What I once thought was my door was in fact locked because there was another door waiting for me. Whether you believe in the idea that things happen for a reason or not, the truth is that life will not always work out the way in which you envision it. And that's okay. It took me a while, but I had to find a way to continue on with my life on a path least expected, and it ended up being my path. If it wasn't for being turned down years ago, I would not be where I am today. You will fail. You will encounter unexpected times, just as you are right now. But these times are a part of your story, and your story is far from over. Which leads me to words of advice number 4. Hatred will not cure ignorance. I'm not going to lie, I felt a lot of hatred in my heart after being told I was not wanted around the team because of my sexuality. But what I grew to learn was that hatred and judgment will not cure ignorance. Let me repeat that. Hatred and judgment will not cure ignorance. The only thing that can cure ignorance is communication and education. When we are quick to anger, we lose all ability to authentically communicate with those who need it the most. By simply allowing people to get to know you, you will see change happen organically. I will always remember a story my grandma used to tell me about her son, my Uncle David, who was born with Down syndrome back in the 1950s, at a time where there was not a lot of knowledge and understanding about disabilities in schools, churches, or in society at large. When it was time for child dedication at the church my grandmother attended, she was told that 17-month-old David could not be dedicated because the scripture said that we should not bring a blemished lamb to the altar. With Down syndrome, David was considered blemished. On Sunday morning, as all the other children went to the front of the church with their parents, my grandmother sat in the back row, holding David. Tears were falling down her face as she watched the other perfect children become dedicated, and her tears lightly fell on David's face. As they did, David looked up at his mother and smiled. A pastor years later shared a new way of thinking about this event, saying that my grandmother dedicated her child in the most profound way that a mother could, by dedicating David with her own tears. Now, I have no doubt that life will feel unfair at times, as I'm sure they do right now, and there will be times when the ignorance of the world can feel overwhelming. But when you find yourself with tears in your eyes because the world feels so unfair, allow those tears to propel you forward. Those tears could very well be a symbol of a better tomorrow. And my final words of advice for you are simple. Believe in yourself and those you meet along the way. We all have unlocked potential that is just waiting to be pulled out. Studies have shown that by simply believing in yourself and in others, we are able to do more and be more. It is amazing to see what happens to the other person and what happens to you when you begin to live your life that way. Legendary coach Bill Walsh always said, the most important thing you can say to someone is, I believe in you. I want to leave you with this. It is often said that hindsight is 20/20, and I don't think it's a coincidence that you are graduating as the class of 2020. Although you may not feel as though your future or even tomorrow seems clear, know that clarity often comes when we have been forced to see life through a different kind of lens. Congratulations, class of 2020. May you continue to use this new lens to view each day as a new opportunity and always seek clarity in even the darkest of days. I believe in you. Thank you.
And Katie, thank you. That makes me want to go out and slay some dragons. And I'm a few years from being a graduate myself. I just want to remind everyone that if you want to submit questions, you can do so in the comments section on LinkedIn. And please provide us with your name as well as your school. And we'd love to take some questions for Katie right now. I'm actually going to kick it off, Katie. If you don't mind. I think that your stories illustrate that even when you're not in sort of a globally challenged time like we are right now, that the unexpected can always happen, whether it's what happened with your father's stroke or the birth of your uncle, that there are always these unexpected moments of adversity that pop up, and it's how we treat them that really define us. What would you advise graduates right now in a time of such adversity? How should they think about how to treat this moment in time?
These times are extremely difficult, but for me personally, one thing that this has brought out is truly a reminder of what's important in life. And this idea that, obstacles will come our way and we can see them as roadblocks, or we can see them as detours. And I choose to see what's happening right now as a detour. And it's not that you're on a different path. Your path is just different than what you expected, but it is your path. It is your story, and you are writing your story by the attitude in which you bring every single day, regardless of what it is that you're doing.
Of course, even if you have a job already, it's no guarantee that things are operating as normal. That's the case for you. Sports are on pause right now. So what are you doing to kind of keep things sharp, to keep yourself active and engaged right now when you're not getting out on the field with your players?
This has actually been an amazing time where we've had a chance to really study the game with our players, even more so than we ever have. So I think not only as a coaching staff, but as players, we have the ability to sit down and kind of see life in a way through a different lens, which in, when I think the outcome, I think is going to be greater and more positive for us because of that. I think, it's easy, like I said, it's easy to feel sorry for yourself. It's easy to mope around or to wonder what's next. But I think, as long as you have that attitude that you're going to go attack each and every single day and use this as fuel to make sure that you never take anything for granted, that you realize that all we are given is today and tomorrow is not promised. Using this as fuel to motivate you to be a better person today is going to bring out the best of all of us.
So we have a question from a student. It's Lauren from Penn State, and she asks, what makes a good leader on and off the field?
Great question, Lauren. There's so many different ways to be a leader. And I think we all kind of think of this stereotypical leader, vocal leader, but you can lead in so many different ways. For me personally, I'm more of a vocal leader, but leadership it's a quality that you get a group of people to swim in the same direction as you. If I'm going to use the example of football, there's so many different schemes. There's so many different defenses, offenses that can win a Super Bowl. But when you don't have leadership, when you don't have someone that's getting everyone to buy in, you will fail. And so in order to be the best leader, you have to truly get to know who it is that you're working with. How do you motivate them? How do you bring out the best in them personally? And, it's harder than it seems because everybody is so different. But that's what's so beautiful is that you have this diverse group of people reaching for one goal. And when you find a way to motivate them to swim in the same direction, you have become a leader.
I also want to ask you, obviously you are in a unique position, right? You're the second female coach in the NFL, the first to coach at a championship level, being an openly gay coach as well. When you approach your job and that uniqueness amongst your peers, do you see that as an advantage, disadvantage? How do you use it? Or do you kind of not think about it at all and you just go in there and focus on the job?
For me personally, I often get the question, what's it like to be a woman in a male dominated field? And yeah, there are going to be a bunch of things that I encounter that other people might not, but the same goes for every single man on our coaching staff. We all bring a diverse set of skills, of gifts, of talents. And me being a woman is just one of my differences. And it doesn't make me any more different than anyone else, in my opinion. If you look at every single coach on our staff, there is not one that is the same. And so I think that's important to remember, that diversity makes an organization better. And I think we all know that, but the reality is we don't all practice that. And I've personally seen the success that a diverse group can bring to an organization. And it's incredible what happens when you get viewpoints from people who might not think the same as you. So I think the more that we have leaders that are pushing diversity, the better we will see our teams, our organizations, and our businesses.
We have another student question. This is from Vindya from ICFAI University in India. So obviously a question coming from far away. And this kind of relates to what you talked about with not, being able to keep that position you wanted as a basketball coach. They ask what to do when you don't hear back from companies. In this case, not necessarily getting rejection, but what do you do when you don't necessarily hear anything at all?
I think the first thing is don't create a false narrative. I think we all have this imposter syndrome where we start to see the facts. The facts is they haven't gotten back to us. And then we create the narrative. They don't think I'm good enough. I'm not going to get the job. But the reality is when you have confidence in what you can bring and what you can offer, be assertive with that confidence. Don't be overbearing, but be assertive. And don't create a narrative that's not true. Get the facts, show what you have to offer, believe in yourself, and go for it.
And now we've got one from Nilu from the University of Denver. What is the key? Small question. What's the key to combating fear?
For me personally, acknowledging it. I think, again, going back to this imposter syndrome, we all look at other people, and what we don't realize is we're viewing everyone's highlight reel. You think of social media, you think of the way we portray ourselves. We are seeing everyone's highlight reel, and in our head, we have fear, we have doubt, we have insecurities, but we don't see that from other people. But we have to remember that it's there. And so the first step is acknowledging fear and knowing that it's okay to not be okay. And when you can do that, you can be more vulnerable with yourself. You can more freely open up about what it is that you're trying to accomplish. But the most important part is don't hide from it.
So as illustrated by your speech, and I know a little bit about your background as well, you mentioned your father, you mentioned your twin sister, your mother, your uncle and grandmother. So obviously family is important to you, and sports is the other sort of crux of what's important to you. As you sort of rose, well, I guess not quickly at the end of the day, but as you rose up in the ranks of football, how do you sort of maintain your core values, in your case, seemingly family and sports, even as you're trying to sort of adapt to an environment, a new job, what have you?
For me, my first step to really making sure that my mental health is okay with just how important my family is not taking any day for granted. And whatever that might be, whether it's a phone call, whether it's showing them that I love them in some other sort of way, but staying connected. I think we all as humans thrive on human connection. And it's important that you don't get so overwhelmed with your job that you forget what's important in life. And for me, yeah, your passion, your why, but it's also the most important thing to me is my family. And so when I wake up each morning and I know, even though my dad can't talk or walk anymore, and he probably won't be traveling to any more of my games, maybe he will, hopefully at some point. But knowing how proud he is, how proud my mom is, how proud my family is, it keeps me going every single day.
And then finally, as we close things out, we've got another question from Divya, who wants to know about facing competition, especially in this current situation, and how you think about a competition. In your case, obviously, there's obvious competitions with your rivals on the field, but also when you're talking about trying to get a job or get a position.
I think it's important, and I keep bringing up imposter syndrome because I think we need to talk more about it. We all have doubts, and I think oftentimes we find ourselves hiding these doubts in fear that someone might find out we're not as good as they think we are. But the truth is, the more that you view that and you're aware of that, and you continue to build, whether it be your knowledge or whatever you feel like you need to get better at, don't hide it, improve it, so that you are confident in yourself, and everything else goes away. The more you build your confidence, the more you take risks, The more you don't create a false narrative, just having faith in yourself is going to be critical when it comes to getting a job, seeking a job, and when you're told no, because you will be told no. But do you have the confidence to know what you have to offer regardless of that no?
And this is sort of related to that, right? And you've been addressing it, but it also speaks to the kinds of questions we're getting and the mindset of the graduates right now. Jason from the University of Maryland asks advice for people who cannot get a job in their desired field.
Jason, great question. So I don't tell people this very often, and this is not an ad for anything. I was a WAG walker. I walked people's dogs. And I would always say you're never too cool to walk someone else's dog. And you never know when a connection is being made. Don't think that you are too good for any job, or there is never a job too small. If you have an opportunity, take it. But continue to know your why, continue to know your path, and you're not deviating from your path. You're still on your path, and you're creating connections even when you don't know it. So make sure, even if that's not your end goal, that you bring your best self every single day, because again, you never know when an opportunity is going to open up.
Katie, I think that's a great place to leave it. Thank you so much. Really inspirational words for the class of 2020. Really appreciate your time. And I want to wish all the best to you, the class of 2020. And please join us once again next Friday for the following 3 Fridays. In fact, we will have more amazing folks for you to hear from. Thank you from all of us at Yahoo Finance and at Verizon.
Thank you.